Good evening, New Orleans, and welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we'll talk a little bit about the New Orleans Saints, the LSU Tigers, the Tulane Green Wave, and of course, we'll also touch a little bit on prep. Tonight, we've got a great panel for you. Joining me on the show is from the New Orleans Times-Picayune, columnist Jeff Duncan, and of course, Sean Fazende of Fox 8 Sports. Guys, welcome. Thanks so much for being with us tonight here on Inside New Orleans Sports.
Yeah, my pleasure, man.
First of all, guys, if you would, tell us a little bit. First of all, we'll start with you, Jeff. Tell us a little bit about what's going on at the Picayune, what you guys are doing. Obviously, you've really gone full-blown with the website.
Yeah, you know, we've launched a new show this past week. I'm kind of venturing into this brave new world of video online. So I have this little show called The Daily Duncan that we're doing every day. It's kind of my little take on the sports world, having fun with it, kind of a lighthearted look at the world of sports. And I'm having a good time, although I really have no clue what I'm doing so far.
Sean, of course, you guys are chock full of Saints programming. Tell us a little bit about what's going on at Fox 8.
Actually, coming up tonight at 10:30 on Fox 8, we'll have our Saints game plan show. Everything you need to know about the Saints leading up to their big NFC South showdown with Tampa Bay. And, of course, our Fox 8 Live tailgate, which will air from 2 to 3 on Sunday, live from Tampa. I will be in Tampa. And, of course, the final play, we wrap it all up Sunday night at 10:30 over on Fox 8. So, yeah, there's a lot of stuff to talk about, and we try to cover them all over there at Fox 8.
You guys definitely do. Folks, don't forget, you can always join us on the phone lines at 504-866-3200. We'll be taking phone calls throughout the program today. But let's get started. Saints come out with a big victory in the Louisiana Superdome, now the Mercedes-Benz Superdome, against the Atlanta Falcons. First of all, guys, your thoughts on the first game. We'll start with you, Jeff.
Well, I thought the Saints would win that game, and I thought it would be exactly the way it played out, a close struggle, a close battle, and I thought the Saints played very well and still have room for improvement. I looked at the film again, watched it now 3 times. They're going to get a lot better, and they still were able to pull out that victory. The defense, I think we all agree, is much better. They're much better up front. After watching the film, Akeem Hicks is a force. That guy is going to be a big-time player. And Cameron Jordan is coming on. I think they found something with this young defensive line. And in some ways, I think some of these injuries they had with Will Smith and Kenyon Coleman, some of the older guys, and this may be a blessing in disguise for them because they're thrusting in these young guys that may have had to take a back seat. And I like what I'm seeing so far. And now I think they have to avoid a trap game down in Tampa.
Yeah, no doubt. Sean?
Well, I thought he said it best. The way I look at it was there were a lot of things to get excited about in this game, but there were just enough kind of things that need to be corrected to provide some teaching points. I thought overall, though, total team win, total team effort. Jeff, you said the defensive line. I thought that was the most pleasant surprise of the entire preseason. And you always there's always that fear, is it preseason fool's gold or is it real? And it translated from preseason to regular season. So I thought the defensive line was excellent. I thought it was a total team effort, total team win. 7 rookies got on the field. Yeah. The 10 rookies on the roster, 7 got on the field. Kenny Vaccaro played every single snap on defense. Kenny Stills had some plays on offense. I do think there was some room for improvement, particularly in the play of the offensive line. But I thought overall, good team win for the Saints to start off the season.
Guys, I agree with you. And again, I think the fan base has to be really excited about the youth movement on this team. All of us have talked about that throughout the preseason, throughout training camp. The need for this team to be able to really kind of change its persona, get younger, get faster, get more athletic. They've done that, especially on the defensive side of the ball. When's the last time the Saints were able to put pressure on any team with 4 down linemen? And we saw that consistently on Sunday against Atlanta. Again, the rave reviews for this defensive line, and it starts obviously with Cameron Jordan, who I got to believe that if he continues to play like he's playing, he's got a chance to be in the Pro Bowl, maybe an all-pro player. Your thoughts specifically on Cameron Jordan and how he's performing, and then we'll kind of morph into some of the other players along that defensive line.
Well, he's becoming a complete player. He's good against the run, and even though he was one of the few guys that didn't get a sack last week up front, he had 8 pressures, was in the backfield routinely, and really Sam Baker, their left tackle, couldn't handle him. And I thought Atlanta's front line was pretty weak. I don't want to take anything away from what the Saints did, but talking to the Atlanta beat writers, they struggled with the Bengals really earlier this year too. So I do think there's some problems with Atlanta's front line. I want to see the Saints do it again this week against Tampa, especially if Carl Nix is out there, because that's really the strength of their offense. But Cam Jordan, there's no question, he's becoming the leader of that front line.
Yeah, I've been a huge Cam Jordan guy ever since he got drafted, and I thought the 3-4 transition was really going to help his skill set because he is so good against the run and against the pass, and he has great pad leverage. He's got a great motor, and he can move laterally, so it allows him to play both the run and the pass. He was able to collapse the pocket. You know, that last play of the game, Vaccaro gets a lot of the credit, but they got pressure with just 3 guys up front. He was one of the guys that got that consistent pressure. I think Cam Jordan can be Sean Payton's first Pro Bowler taken in the first round. He's kind of had those kind of middle tier guys that he's taken in the first round, but Cam Jordan has the potential, if he keeps playing the way he's playing, and it is a 16-game season, to have that kind of Pro Bowl potential. And I thought he played excellent, and I really felt like he's kind of becoming the leader of what is a very young defensive line.
I would agree with both you guys. You know, also, we see Broderick Bunkley go out. He's going to be out now several weeks, according to the NFL Network, with a calf injury. But I didn't see a real drop-off. Matter of fact, I thought the defense played much better with John Jenkins in the middle. What are your thoughts on Jenkins and how he performed on Sunday?
Well, you know, Jenkins is a huge man. He's a massive guy. He's a space eater, and he's going to be a run stuffer. That's what he's there to do. It's a role he's going to play. I don't think he was prepared to play that many snaps. All of a sudden, he got thrown out there, and he played about 30 snaps. But, you know, there's no question. I mean, he's a guy that down the road would have been the starter. And Bunkley, frankly, did not play. He was one of the guys that didn't play well last year, and he wasn't playing well early in this game. So, again, that's another example of it. Maybe it's a blessing in disguise. They get to thrust this young kid out there. Now we'll see if he can hold up. You know, down in this Tampa heat, especially on Sunday, it's going to be interesting to see how many snaps he gets.
That's a great point, Jeff.
And you know, Bunkley going out, it's going to test their depth a little bit because now they got a little bit of Tom Johnson to get worked in the mix as well. John Jenkins, though, I thought he played well. I think it's a great point with the humidity and the heat down in Tampa. He's a guy, he's one of the, to me, he's, other than Akeem Hicks, who kind of slides in and out, that body type. He's one of the few guys that, probably the only guy on this roster that has a true 3-4 nose tackle body type. So, and you know, I said it when they took him, and it essentially became the John Jenkins for Chris Ivory. That is a much better fit for this team right now, and I think you're starting to see it. Chris Ivory had 10 carries for 15 yards this week. So John Jenkins, I think, is another solid anchor along that defensive line.
I would agree. I mean, you guys mentioned Akeem Hicks. I mean, look at the young blood that they have now along this defensive line. This is a lot different than what we've seen in the past. I mean, you have to go back to almost the Mora days to be able to look at a defensive line that has this kind of talent that they've got right now. Again, we got to preface that with being saying they're young. They got a long way to go, but at least on paper right now and what they've been able to do in the first game, this could be a formidable defensive line going forward.
Well, the best line they've had that I've covered was that first Hazlitt team that had Leroy Glover, Joe Johnson, Darren Howard, and Norman Hand. That was a dominant front four, and if they can get back to any semblance of that, and I think they've got the makings of it because, like you said, I mean, Jenkins is a space eater. Akeem Hicks is kind of a swing guy. But, man, he is a massive – he's 6'5", 340 and can move. He looked like a young Reggie White out there. You know, he was amazing at what he was doing in that game the other day. And then you got the fast guy, Junior Gillette, off the edge, who's a speed rusher, and Sam Baker couldn't keep up with him either. So I think you got the makings of all four of those guys, and they're all in their second, third year, first year. This could be their core for the future.
You mentioned the outside linebacker position. They go into the game last week with obviously just, really two outside linebackers. They pick up Jay Richardson today. They cut Andy Tanner. Your thoughts on the outside linebacker position? Martez Wilson still kind of suffering. What did you see last week? Well, we'll start with you, Sean.
Well, you know, I thought, first off, Paris Harrison came in and played well. I thought he was solid in both aspects of the game. You can clearly see he has knowledge of this type of system at his days in San Francisco. And he was a solid player in San Francisco. He was no pushover in San Francisco. But adding Jay Richardson did not surprise me because he's a guy I believe qualifies as a vested veteran. So that was there could have been a fiscal move to get rid of him and bring him back in week 2. And also they're banged up in the front seven. He adds some versatility. He can slide in to play defensive end. I think he'll probably make most of his impact at outside linebacker. But I think it is a good move, and it's one that's needed right now because Martez Wilson, although he has practiced all week, he was kind of a surprise scratch late last week, but still, even with him, you only have 3. You'd like to probably have 4, you know, a backup for each outside linebacker in this team. So I would think the Jay Richardson addition wasn't a total shock to me, and I think it's a pretty good, solid move for this defense.
Yeah, and right now they were having to Band-Aid in Will Herring and David Hawthorne to play outside. I think those guys they prefer to play inside if they could. So the Harrelson move, I think we're going to look back on that one a lot like that Scott Shanley move back in '06 where they found a guy late who's going to be a really good role player for this team.
One of the things you got to like about the team, and we talked a little bit about the youth movement, even Richardson is a 5-year guy. They've got some young players on this defense now. All of a sudden, you go from where they were maybe last year and maybe the year before. All of a sudden, you got younger players, as I mentioned, more athletic, more speed. That's got to be something, obviously, that the fan base has really got to be excited about. Kenny Vaccaro. A lot of draft nicks were looking at the possibility of maybe going outside linebacker and Jarvis Jones in the draft. But the Saints went with Kenny Vaccaro, and one of the reasons why I believe they did is because of his versatility. Thoughts on how he performed on Sunday and what you expect out of him in the future?
Well, I said this week. He's the best tackler I've seen the Saints have since I've covered the team already. He's exactly what they needed on the back end. He's a sure tackler. He's versatile. He can rush the quarterback. He's not a great deep safety right now, and he'll admit that. He didn't play a lot of that at Texas. He moved around, and I think they're using him exactly like they should use him as a joker kind of matchup guy. But the thing that I like most about him is he's got a swagger about him. It's an overused term sometimes, but that guy has it. He's not shy. He's not afraid to. He thinks he's good or knows he's good, and he's going to end up being, I think, along with Cam Jordan, the leader of this defense going forward as they mature and get down the road. I mean, he's got those leadership qualities, and I think he'll be the eventual replacement for Roman Harper at strong safety.
Well, rookie playing his first NFL game, he played every single snap. I mean, I can't understate that or overstate that enough. I mean, this guy came in and played like he'd been a 5 or 6 year veteran. I talked to him in the locker room on Wednesday, and he said, I don't know what it was. I wasn't nervous. It was football to me. I stepped on the field. It looked like he'd been doing it for a long time. And, you saw the multiple, he was playing in the nickel. He was lined up at the outside linebacker, rushing the passer. They had him back deep at safety at times, and I think you're right with that. That's not his strong suit right now, but I think this skill set that he has is perfect for today's NFL. When you talk about the hybrid athletes at quarterback, he's able to go side to side. He's able to do a lot of different things. So I think he's a player you can get excited about. And he's got a little bit of aggressiveness, physicality. We all saw that in the training camp. And, you saw the hit on Matt Ryan, which he got fined for. Clearly, that's not a good thing. You don't want to penalize your team 15 yards. But I wonder if the Saints are willing to take a little bit of that with him, just because he does bring a little bit of an edge to that team that maybe they lost a little bit last year. And he's a young player, got a lot of confidence, and I see why they like him.
Well, and I agree with both you guys. One of the things I love is the versatility of this guy, his ability to play multiple positions. You guys broke the tape down. You saw it over and over again, how they utilized him. And again, when you start talking about Vaccaro, to me, I think he's just going to get better. You mentioned the ability to play that deep safety, but I mean, you saw him going against one of the best tight ends in the NFL last year, and then going forward, when you start looking at Vaccaro, just look at the play in the end zone at the end of the game. Really not his where he was supposed to be, but his instincts got him in a position to be able to make a play. Again, right now, looking at it in its infant stage, I think it's an exceptional pick for this team.
Yeah, and they needed a playmaker. We've all talked about that for years. They need a playmaker on the back end. I'm not saying this is going to be a guy that's going to get a ton of interceptions, but he doesn't have to. That was a huge play that wins a game for him. I think he's going to make a lot of those kind of plays over the years.
And he's made the other two safeties better. Again, when you look at Jenkins and Harper, I don't know if it was just them playing against Atlanta, knowing Atlanta like they. But I thought they played one of their best games in recent history for the Saints. Harper and both Jenkins both maligned in terms of their coverage ability. They covered well. Both of them obviously made big plays in terms of turnovers. To me, again, if they could continue to do that along with what Vaccaro's bringing to the table, all of a sudden you got a pretty good safety group.
And I like Vaccaro. Jeff, I think you and I talked about this even before the draft, and I think you had pointed out, they need somebody that can cover the tight end, and I think he's able to bring that sort of ability. And we saw it. Listen, it was clear. I mean, you watched the tape. It was clear to me. One player that they were not going to let beat them this time, as he has in many other games, was Tony Gonzalez. And I thought you saw it on the last play. And I think Kenny Vaccaro brings that ability to cover that tight end. In today's NFL, that tight end is getting so much more athletic. You need a player that can consistently guard and make plays on the ball when in tight quarters when you throw it to the tight end.
Rob Ryan had a great game plan in that game. You're exactly right. He took out Tony Gonzalez and Julio Jones. Now, it helped a lot that Roddy White wasn't 100%.
Yes.
Agreed.
Saints defenders all talked about that. And we saw why Harry Douglas was able to make some plays. He was getting a lot of single coverage, and he's a good player. So they really, I thought, had a great game plan, and it showed in the game. When it got down close, Atlanta, and I also believe this, Atlanta, the Saints are just in their head. I mean, how many times have we seen this now?
Yes.
Last year, they get down the goal line, they can't score. A couple of years ago, Mike Smith goes for it on fourth down. They just, for whatever reason, almost outthink themselves in these games, and I think the Saints kind of own them right now.
Let's head to the phone lines, 504-866-3200. Carl is in Slidell. Carl, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports.
Yeah, thank you. I'm curious. I'm listening to y'all talk, and the Saints need help in the secondary with the deep ball. And this guy, I don't know if he can cover the deep ball. And when Eric Reed out of LSU was available, I thought that was a better choice. Getting somebody of his size, 6'2", somebody who can cover the deep ball, he can tackle, and this guy reminds me of Roman Hoffa. Just a good tackler. But what he did in the end zone wasn't the deep ball. That wasn't considered deep because, if I'm not mistaken, they were on the Saints. What was that? The 10-yard line when they threw the ball. So, I just wanted your thoughts on that.
Carl, thank you for the phone call. Jeff, it looks like he's always going to be compared to Eric Reed. Eric Reed had a nice game for the 49ers last week, no doubt about that. Well, was he the perfect fit for this Rob Ryan defense, Kenny Vaccaro?
Well, I think what he brings to the table of his versatility for what the Saints need. I mean, really, Malcolm Jenkins is going to be the deep safety.
Yes.
He's a former, corner. He's got range back there. And I agree. I think Eric Reed is a much better deep safety than Kenny Vaccaro, but I think the Saints like this guy's skill set better. And I think both of them are going to have great careers, and you're right, they're probably always going to be compared, but I think it really is what flavor you like in your safety.
Eric Reed and Kenny Vaccaro are just not the same type of player, and then the Saints felt like with the offenses they face, Vaccaro is a better fit for what they have to do. And you see it. He's more of a joker. He's a hybrid. He can get close to the line, cover the nickel. And when he's back deep, he doesn't necessarily have the greatest of ball skills. But, it's two different kinds of safety. I think Malcolm Jenkins is more of your deep ball kind of defender. And Kenny Vaccaro is just not that type of player.
When you guys broke the tape down from the Atlanta game and you looked at the Rob Ryan defense, a lot of people were looking at the possibility of seeing a lot of the exotic looks that we saw from Greg Williams. How much did you guys see the exotic D that everybody was looking for, and as opposed to maybe being in their base defense?
Well, they didn't blitz a lot, so I think we'll see more of that in the future. I think the game plan that was not involved in this game plan, but we did see at the very end where they got in that crazy amoeba defense, the third and fourth down. And, it's funny, we all are hyped up about the goal line stand, but, they lose that game probably if Steven Jackson catches that ball on the goal line. So, that's how close this league is. But I did think that we saw a little bit of that exotic look in the things, and the players like it. I mean, the players are buying in, and we all saw what happened last year. I think it was just the opposite effect. They just did not buy in for whatever reason. They lost their confidence in Spagnuolo's system, and they played a lot worse than they are. Clearly, This team is not as bad defensively as they played last year. And I think sometimes the opposite can happen, and they can start buying in and believing they're a lot better. And we'll see what happens from here on out. I mean, I think this game, the Saints put their chips all in. And they know Atlanta very well, and they knew they had to get this win. And they have a real shot here, I think, to start 4-0. And I think they know that. And then you get a little confidence, you start believing you're better than you are, and then you end up with one of those magical seasons. I think that's what we saw this past week.
Sean, you broke the tape down. What did you see?
I saw a lot of different personnel groupings. I saw a lot of different pre-snap looks, but he's dead on. By my count, a true blitz, I counted 8. Now, it may have been more or less, depending on what you consider a blitz, but what I can define as a blitz is more than 4 guys. I counted 8 times, and quite frankly, Matt Ryan was 6 of 8 on those, and I think he threw a touchdown. So he was Matt Ryan. They know Matt Ryan is one of the best in the NFL at identifying the hot routes and blitz. So that was part of the game plan. Check mark for Rob Ryan in the game plan, knowing the situation, and Sean Payton knew that as well. And there was a lot of snap exotic looks, different personnel packages. I didn't necessarily see a whole lot of exotic blitzes, but I think that's in the arsenal. I certainly think that's in the arsenal with different quarterbacks and a different quarterback that may not be as good at reading blitzes and finding hot routes. So I think it's part of we only saw a part of what Rob Ryan is capable of.
I was just going to say one thing. One thing I did notice, and you probably saw this as well, saw it during the game. One of the knocks on Rob Ryan was that he gets some calls in late. I know Sean Payton got on him early in preseason, and we saw some of that happen in the game. And they got away with it.
Yes.
They got away with it a couple times where guys were running on the field late. They were confused on defense, and for whatever reason, the Falcons just didn't take advantage of it. Keep an eye on that in the future.
Turning point in the game was Roman Harper's fumble recovery. They were confused on that play. Yeah. Keenan Lewis was looking around like, what's happening here? And all of a sudden, they got a little lucky on a Malcolm Jenkins hustle play to strip it out of Julio Jones' hand. Turned out to be the turning point in the game.
Was this the defense you think we'll see going forward? I think the only thing that I'm afraid of going forward is the lack of depth. If they start to get some injuries at key positions, again, the outside linebacker position, we've seen some injuries already along the defensive line. What are your thoughts on this defense as we kind of move a little bit further into the season? And will it be affected by maybe lack of depth?
Well, I think the defensive line has to be a real surprise. I think you've got something there. I don't think that's going away. I think those guys are going to get better, and I like what I see there. But again, they're not very deep at corner, and they're not very deep at linebacker because of the injuries. But no one else in the league really is either. And these things are going to happen. You have to get kind of fortunate. But I think right now they're playing with confidence. They got a lot of confidence in that win, especially the way they closed it out. So we'll see what. Again, I felt early on this schedule, this game coming up was going to be the game that they could lose. And I didn't know Tampa was going to be in complete disarray by week 2.
Right.
But I do think we'll learn a lot more this week about the Saints.
Depth is always an issue in the NFL with only the 53-man roster and then 45, 46 on game day. So that can always be an issue, and you're only as good as your second, third-tier guy. So you're talking about a situation where if they do lose some players, yeah, it could be an issue. But right now they're surviving that defensive line kind of flux. You kind of, as you said, you got to kind of get lucky a little bit. But I like where they are on the front end. And I know the corners have been so-so in the preseason, but I like where they are on the back end as well when you add Vaccaro to the mix. And I still think Keenan Lewis is going to be a good player.
Well, especially considering how many players they've already lost on the defense already.
Right, and I tell you, Corey White came in and played well.
I like him.
I think he's a very good player. Look, we're in this world where everybody analyzes every play and everything. He's going to make some mistakes and he's going to get beat sometimes. These are NFL players. Yes. But he came in the other day in a pinch, just thrust out there, and he made some plays.
What you guys see out of Sean Payton in his first game back? Sean, why don't you take it first? I mean, you guys are around him a lot. You're in the locker room. You get a chance to be able to go to his press conferences and get a feel for him. What did you see out of Payton on the sidelines?
Well, leading up to the game, I saw a guy that was pretty wound up, was really kind of ready for this game to start. I just felt like you could just tell certain different things. He was very short with us with the media all week. So I felt like this was a game. And I'd said before the game, it was a little bit of an unknown for him. Had a little bit of a 2006 feel. He was coaching 25 new players he had never coached before. That's over almost half of his roster. So there was a little bit of anxiety. And I think you saw that in the first quarter. They were a little sluggish. You saw on both sides of the ball. Got that big break. Boom. It's like they snapped out of it and they full speed ahead. You could tell on Monday the relief on his face when he spoke with us with the media. That was a game he really wanted, and he knew it was at stake, and they had been talking about it for 3 months once the schedule came out. So I felt like I thought the game was coached well. I thought the game plan going in was obviously well. I thought the first quarter was a little sluggish. May have had a lot to do with the emotion, him being back. Steve Gleason being there, the Mark Romig situation. So there were a lot of external emotional factors, and I think took them a while to get into rhythm, but once they did, it looked like the old Saints again.
The one thing I noticed from the press box, and I'm going to write about this Sunday because I think it was a good example of what they missed last year. They're driving down for that last drive, trying to put the game away. And at one point, they had a couple losses on some runs. And there was, I think, a Falcons player cramped up, and Sean called the entire offense over to the sideline, and he reamed them out. I mean, he got in the offensive line's face because he didn't feel like they were performing. And I agree with you. They did not play well. And he challenged them. And I turned to my colleagues in the press box and said, this is what they were missing last year. No, this is no disrespect to Aaron Cromer or Joe Vitt. They can't do that the way Sean Payton can do that with his team. Now, they ended up, on the very next play, Drew Brees got sacked, so it didn't really play out that well. But they did end up driving down and getting a field goal, and it ended up being the difference in the game. They were missing that intensity, that accountability, and attention to detail.
You mentioned the offensive line. I'd like to go there next. You know, they've been labeled a finesse offensive line. They don't like that label. They obviously want to be known as a physical offensive line. They do a great job in pass protection. This is a little bit of an offensive line in flux, obviously, with a new offensive tackle in Charles Brown coming in. Critique the offensive line for me from this past week, especially when it comes to the running game.
Well, Jari Evans had a bad game, which is a shocker, I think, for everybody here. He did not play well. It had to be one of his worst games at right guard. And Ben Grubbs did not play well. On the interior, they did not grade out very well. I know Zach Strief had a very strong grade at right tackle. And also Charles Brown kind of struggled a little bit. And that's going to happen. But they did not play well as a unit, and I think they would admit that. Again, sometimes you just chalk that up to the other team. I thought Jonathan Babineau was a terror inside. He's a very good player. O.C. Omenure is a good player, but they've got to hold up better in the run game if they're going to try and be this complete offense that they want to be.
Talk about talking points or teaching points, as I said earlier in the show. That's front and center. That offensive line is so capable of playing so much better than they played on Sunday. As you said, Jari Evans, one of his worst games as a Saint, got called for back-to-back holding penalties, got away with another one, gave up a sack. It wasn't his guy that got the sack, but he was the one that kind of, that interior rush with Drew Brees is so vital, and he let his guy go by and ended up being Charles Brown's guy that got the sack. Charles Brown didn't play particularly well. Ben Grubbs got pushed back on the point of attack a lot, and that's why you saw the lack of production in the ground game a lot of times. That 4th and 1 with Mark Ingram, -3. Fans love to jump on Mark Ingram. He had no chance. They could have had Adrian Peterson back there. Zach Strief honestly got beat on that play. Ingram had no chance. And that's why you saw the lack of production in the run game. And you didn't really see that big run. They had a lot of 2, 3, 4-yard gains. It had one 11-yard game. But other than that, it really was a lot of nickel and dime. And kudos to the Saints for sticking with it because it had an effect in the 4th quarter. But I think overall that unit could really play a lot better. And that can be hopefully a reason for a win or a loss going forward.
With about a minute before we head to our break, Jeff, do you expect a marked improvement by this offensive line coming up against Tampa?
Well, I don't think they're going to play worse than that, but they're never going to, I don't think, ever be a great run blocking team. They're just not built that way. That's not how they were drafted. That's not what the Saints do. They don't practice it enough. You've talked to the linemen in the past that have left here. They said, look, we spend all of our time retreating, blocking for Drew Brees. They don't practice enough. I think if they can just be a solid run blocking unit, they'll be fine.
I bet they play better. One, because they self-scout. They saw on film what they put out there. But also, Tampa Bay's a little bit of disarray, but right now their pass rush is not in disarray. Their pass rush is actually very, very good. 5 sacks last week. So they have to be ready for this team coming up. So I think they'll play better. That unit's got a lot of pride, and they do have some new faces, but I think overall they'll improve.
New faces and a little bit of a new scheme now with a zone blocking scheme. How much was that kind of a learning curve for these guys?
Well, and you got Brett Ingles, a new offensive line coach. So I think we have to give this group time to gel a little bit. That's one unit that really does have to work together. And you've got a new left tackle, and I'm curious to see how Ben Grubbs plays out. I don't think he was the guy that we all thought he was going to be last year. He's not Carl Nix, and he was not off to a good start, so we'll see how he plays out. This could be a guy that maybe down the road they have to replace.
Yeah, I think they'll improve. They have a chance to get better. We've seen Jari Evans is going to play better. He's not going to play like that every week. De La Puente was one of the highest graded centers in the NFL last year, so I think overall this unit will play better. I'm willing to kind of give them a pass for week 1 because it was week 1, a new season, new offensive line coach.
And you can scheme in terms of the passing game and to be able to protect Drew Brees. The running game, you just got to be a physical offensive line. You got to be able to knock the guy off the ball in front of you. And what it comes down to, again, is, we heard about the offseason, the weight room, and they're bigger, stronger, the type of, obviously at this point, we didn't really see it against Atlanta. The hope is that we'll see it coming up against Tampa Bay and going going forward. Really, again, if we go back in Saints history, when the offensive line has been called finesse, they felt challenged, and most of the time they stepped up to the challenge. At least the group under Sean Payton.
Yeah, and I certainly don't think of him as a finesse offensive line. I really don't. I just don't know how there'll ever be a dominant run blocking offensive line.
You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports on WLAE TV. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Our guest tonight, Jeff Duncan, columnist for the New Orleans Times-Picayune, and Sean Fazende of Fox 8 Sports. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation about the New Orleans Saints. We're also going to talk a little bit about the LSU Tigers and the Tulane Green Wave. And if we have time in today's program, we'll also touch on some prep sports as well. 504-866-3200 if you'd like to join the conversation. Stick around, New Orleans.
Packers. Viking. Packers. Viking.
Viking.
Red state, blue state, vegan.
Carnivore.
We come from different places.
Uptown.
Downtown.
Optimist.
We come to different conclusions.
Half empty.
Half full.
But when we live united, we create real, lasting change in the building blocks of life. The education, income, and health of our communities,
Live
our families,
united.
even the person next to us.
Live united.
Real change won't happen without you. So give, advocate, volunteer, live united. Sign up at liveunited.org.
You're watching WLAE, New Orleans Public Television. Find us on Cox Channel 14, Charter Channel 11 and 711, AT&T Channel 32 and 1032, Dish TV, Direct TV, and over-the-air broadcast on Channel 32.
Know what?
What?
Since I got adopted, I've learned a lot about these humans.
I know. I mean, check out these two. It's Flirt City over here.
Yeah, I noticed that. It looks like my human is definitely into your human.
Oh, look! I think she's getting his number.
Nice.
Your human's got some sweet moves.
Takes after his dog. Oh, look, they're doing that thing where they put their arms around each other.
She kicked up a leg. It's like in the movies.
That's awesome. Looks like we're going to be hanging out a little bit more.
Hi, we're Ola High, and you're watching WLAE TV.
In the search for beautiful people, music that moves, and real culture, America, there's only one LA Coast. Go Coast, Louisiana delivers the treasures of the Gulf, fresh to you.
I think we need a bigger boat.
Sundays at 8:30 p.m. on LAE.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. With us today, we got a great panel. Jeff Duncan of the New Orleans Times-Picayune and Sean Fazende of Fox 8 Sports. You can always join the conversation at 504-866-3200. And, of course, you can catch us live each and every Thursday night on here on WLAE, 6 to 7 p.m. with a rebroadcast on Friday nights, 10 to 11 p.m. Let's head to the phone lines as we start our second half hour. Let's head to Tony on the West Bank. Tony, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports.
How you doing, Eric? Thank you guys for taking my call tonight. I have a quick question. On the Saints offensive line, as an armchair quarterback sitting at home, and everybody's entitled to their own opinion, I believe that the Saints, last year, who was that they let go that went to Tampa Bay off the offensive line?
Carl Nix,
yeah. I think that was one they should have kept, and I guess we'll see him this week since we face in Tampa Bay. But I really hope that, this offensive line that's in place can protect our jewel there, and Drew Brees. We don't want him to get hurt. But another thing that you have to have a good offensive line before y'all went to break, y'all hit on it, is to have a running game. And I don't know what it is, not to down Mark Ingram. He was an awesome football player in college, but I think on the NFL level, I'd have to say that this guy's a bust.
Hey, Tony, I would agree that, the knock on him coming out was that he was a tweener, and he's starting to look like a tweener. He's not quite big enough to be a power back, and I don't think he's quite elusive enough or fast enough to be that speed scat back guy. And he looks like just a solid NFL player, but I don't think he's ever going to be a star.
Well, to me, I know Mark Ingram seems to be the hot topic among Saints fans.
He is the whipping boy.
Always somebody.
Yeah. But he is the whipping boy of the fan base.
I've noticed two things on tape with him. One, he does not break tackles. He does not. Pierre Thomas is not a great runner or fast runner or a particularly huge guy, but he breaks at least one tackle on every play, and he's incredibly smart, knows how to set up his blocks. Last run of the game Mark Ingram had, William Moore kind of came from out of nowhere. It was a good hole, ran through it. Could have been a big game. William Moore came from out of nowhere, kind of knocked him off his feet. He didn't wrap up and tackle. It was more of a knock, and he kind of just, boom, immediately went down. And I just kept thinking on the play, Pierre Thomas breaks that tackle. And if he breaks that tackle, he scores a touchdown. Other plays, he's beginning a lot more runs off to the edge. And what I noticed with him is he overruns his blocks, if that makes any sense. It's almost like he doesn't have enough patience to let the blocks kind of set up and cut back. He doesn't have a great feel for the cutback. And I think those are the two things that are really working against Mark Ingram, besides the fact that he's not fast enough to be a fast guy, not big enough to be a big guy. And I just don't think in the scheme he's just not picking up quite the chemistry the other running backs seem to have with their role in the offense.
No, look, guys, I agree with both of you. And look, I think that John Stitchcomb said it best in the preseason telecast of the preseason games, that he's just not a one-cut runner. Mm-hmm. You look at the players that play well in this offense, in the offensive backfield, those guys are one-cut runners. They see the hole, they cut to daylight. He just doesn't do it. And whether it's lack of vision, whether it's just not used to it at this point, he's not that bull running back that you thought that you were getting when they drafted him. They'd be a physical guy that you can put him down on the goal line and he's gonna make a play. He's not as physical as a guy like Chris Ivory was, and he doesn't look like he's as physical as maybe a Kyrie Robinson. So he is a tweener, and ultimately, again, I think the Saints are going to try to ride him, but we'll see. I just think they're a better team with Sproles and Thomas in the backfield.
And Deuce McAllister used to tell me something about the running game at the NFL level that I don't think really anybody's aware of, and he talked about the timing of the blocking, and that there's actually a built-in timing mechanism to when the hole's going to open, and you have to run to that hole even when it's not there. It's going to open, and if you don't hit it just right, it's going to close. And Reggie Bush struggled with that early on. He's gotten that down. I think Mark Ingram, like you said, he tends to overrun some of these things. I'm not sure his timing is great for a runner, and I'm not sure his vision's all that great. And those are two kind of intangibles that you got to have to be a great back.
Yeah, and I think he's a player. The Saints are going to give him every opportunity for the near future to succeed, but Sean Payton is not married to anyone. I know he obviously drafted Reggie Bush, and eventually he kind of faded out to where they ended up trading him. So I think with that situation, Mark Ingram, if he continues to constantly not be productive in the offensive backfield, I think at some point you could see a decision made with him in regards to the future.
Gentlemen, how good can the Saints team be this season? Sean?
I think I said before the season, I said 10 wins was what I saw, and that was basically at that point. I thought a lot of it depended on the defense. I think what the offense can do. I think the defense is much improved. I do think they want to get a little more balance on offense as far as balance and productivity, not necessarily just balancing carries. We got a lot of questions at our station and our fan chat about the window of Drew Brees and asking what's the long-term plan at quarterback. Already kind of questioning whether or not is he losing a little bit. I don't know what you guys saw. I didn't see anything Sunday that leads me to believe that he lost anything, any zip off his fastball, other than maybe the timing with Kenny Stills because he's a little bit of a rookie, not quite being quite there yet. So you have Drew Brees, you had this offense. The defense was always kind of a what if, and I think they're improving. But I also want to take into account the NFC has gotten that much better. So there's a whole lot of factors here. I think they are capable of winning 10 games.
I think 9-10 was what I thought before the season. I'm actually a little more encouraged now after watching them. I think they're a better team than Atlanta. And I think Atlanta's a team that's going to come back to the pack a little bit. They don't look as good in their offensive line. I know Roddy White was banged up. I think the Saints can win this division. And I think they're going to get off to a strong start, and they need one. Because when you look at that schedule, it really stiffens in November.
Yes.
They got some tough games. They need to stay healthy before that. But if they get 4-0, it could be like one of those years. Look, we all remember that magical 2006 season. They really weren't that talented a team, but they got off to a great start, got a head start on everybody, and they got confidence. And then they go 500 the last half of the season, and they still end up winning the division. But we all know what it's going to come down to in the NFC. You've got to get home field advantage. We've seen this team go on the road. They can't beat San Francisco in San Francisco. They couldn't beat Seattle. They couldn't beat Chicago. But when they get people in the dome, they can beat anybody. And I think it's going to come down to getting that best record to try and see who wins the NFC.
Final question about the Saints before we move on to the college game. Tampa Bay taking on the Saints this weekend. Obviously in Tampa. You guys mentioned the weather. Now, I understand, but the humidity and the heat down in Tampa. But let's face it, they had a training camp in New Orleans. What are your thoughts on this weekend's game? Jeff, I'll go with you first. Saints got a chance to go down to Tampa and pull out a victory here?
Well, they're clearly a better team than Tampa. Tampa's in disarray. They're already having team meetings. There's all kinds of things going on down there that I think is a very bad sign for them. But you just never know. I mean, typically what happens in the NFL is the first week, whoever loses comes back. I mean, this is a 500 league, guys. And I would not overrate what happened in week one and just automatically chalk up a win. Things aren't going to go as well down there. You get a few turnovers early or something goes against you. Some of those breaks we talked about went their way, and all of a sudden you're staring at a deficit. So I don't know. I think they definitely can win this game, but it wouldn't shock me if they lost it and then came back and won a couple games at home.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think this has the potential to be a scary game. What was lost in the fact that they lost to the Jets is, quite frankly, they should not have lost to the Jets, but that defense of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is legit. So they're going to be, ready to play, and they could very well be 1-0. They know that. That's all. Josh Freeman has been challenged. A lot of us have questioned whether or not he can be a franchise player. And always there's always something weird that seems to happen at Raymond James Stadium. Last year, it was that crazy rule with Patrick Robinson pushed Mike Williams out of bounds when Josh Freeman had broke the pocket. The year before that, Sean Payton hurt his leg on the sideline. It's always a wild game. And inside the NFC South, no game is a given. So I think it can be a tough game for the Saints. I really do.
You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. Eric Asher with you, along with Jeff Duncan and Sean Fazende. We're going to switch gears. We're going to talk a little about the LSU Tigers. 504-866-3200 is the phone number if you'd like to get involved. And I guess before we can even talk about the Tigers, we got to talk about Les Miles and the situation with Oklahoma State. 5-part series, investigative report by Sports Illustrated. Jeff, why don't you take it first? You've got a little bit of relationship with the writer that's involved in this investigative report. Talk a little bit about what has been written so far, and of course the type of writer that isn't doing this investigation as well.
Well, George Dorman and Thayer Evans are senior writers at Sports Illustrated. They worked on this series for 10 months, and they're getting a lot of heat right now, which is natural. When you come out with a story like this that's as explosive as it is, you're going to have to take some heat, especially in this day and age that we live in. But, ultimately what I think our viewers and readers want to know is how is this going to reflect, what kind of ramifications will it have for Les Miles. I don't think there's going to be any for Les Miles. I think Les Miles is a very honest guy. I think he tries to run a clean program. And I think there's a lot of things that are coming up in this Oklahoma State expose that happen at a lot of schools. It's all comes down to how tight a ship do you run with the boosters. What kind of access do you allow them? And I think that's a dangerous thing. And I think the allegations that we're seeing at Oklahoma State was that the boosters were too close to the program, and you open yourself up to some improprieties that way. I'm not sure exactly how it is at LSU, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was some similar type of things going on at every major college school, every major college football program. But ultimately, I don't think it's going to have any impact on the program. But I do think it's a little bit of a hit to Les Miles' image because it's been so clean up to this point.
But you say that, but he does have a little bit of a reputation up in Baton Rouge of being a little bit lax with his players, a little bit of almost too friendly, almost too much of a player's coach, and not necessarily respected in regard of a disciplinarian. So
and giving boosters access, right?
I can't verify that, but it is what it is.
They're at practices. They get a chance to see the practices that the media doesn't.
That's the way it was at Oklahoma State,
right.
And that was that's where you run into the slippery slope of being able to manage the program.
Sorry,
no, it's okay. And I just think with Les Miles, and I'll be the first one to admit I didn't get too far into the investigative piece, but what I did read. Nothing. If anyone is shocked by this, they need to come from under the rock they've been living under for the last 20, 30 years. Because quite frankly, this is the underbelly of college football. Nothing really kind of wowed me with that as far as wow, that really happened. To me, that's sort of you have to expect some of that in what has become a pretty profitable game in college football. And then when you have it set up to where the players aren't getting what they feel like they deserve, or whatever the case may be, whenever the players aren't getting compensation, you have it set up sometimes for this type of stuff to happen.
I think also what needs to be said about this series is, a lot of people have called it a hit piece on Oklahoma State, and it's all in I guess what lens you look at it through. But I look at it as more exactly what you said, Sean. This is a window, or we're pulling back the curtain on major college football, and we're seeing all the dirty laundry that is being aired. And I'm not saying, I don't think Sports Illustrated is saying, oh, Oklahoma State is the only school doing this. I think they're saying this is what it's like. Here's the bare facts of how a program is run. And you be the judge if it's bad or good.
I agree with both you guys. I mean, I think anybody that at this point doesn't believe that whether this happened at Oklahoma State or not, that this is not part and parcel of what we're seeing with major college football, I think they're kidding themselves. We've heard these rumors for as long as college football has been a big-time game. And ultimately, when you see these type of pieces come out, that they shouldn't be shocking anybody. If anything, the only thing that I think that Tiger fans are worried about is, will this taint Les Miles in some form or fashion? You know it's going to be used against him in recruiting, but they're doing that anyway. But ultimately, the statute of limitations are up, and this, from what I understand, they're pretty tight in terms of watching what's going on within the LSU program. They don't want to have any missteps.
Well, I think in regards to LSU, they're going to always be LSU, and I don't know if Les Miles' image per se. You just hope it's not a distraction as he gets game plan week to week. If this thing continues to blow up, does it distract him from what his true job is right now, which is the coach of the 2013 LSU Tigers, not what happened from 01 to 05 when he was at Oklahoma State. So I think that is the biggest worry amongst LSU fans, and I think he does a pretty good job of compartmentalizing. So I don't necessarily see it, at least not this week against Kent State, but I guess we'll see it.
The best thing that happened, honestly, for Les Miles and that Oklahoma State story is the Yahoo investigative report into Alabama, Tennessee, and Mississippi State right now with the DJ Fluker situation, where they literally have a paper trail to be able to follow what's going on between cash that was moved from obviously agents through Luther Davis to DJ Fluker. That to me will take this Oklahoma State investigation or investigative report maybe off the front page a bit.
And there's some irony there, because we've all known how Nick Saban's come out and talked about agents, and he's come out steadfast against them, and yet here he has his own program being tainted by that. And so, look, it's happened before, and it's going to happen again. I don't know how you police this in this modern age that you're in major college football, because there's so many agents involved, and they're runners, and they're getting involved in these kids' heads, and it's just getting worse and worse. And I'm sure down the road they're going to have to address it NCAA-wise.
Well, there's no doubt. And look, you're in a situation where you have a possibility of going to the pros, a very good possibility. And you're in a situation where you're a college kid, maybe you got a year or so left. You got the agents in your ear. And this is going to happen over and over again. And it's hard to keep the agents off the campuses. It just is. So it's something they're going to have to deal with.
Yeah, and I just think it just goes to show you the present state of college football. This is just how businesses run. It's not pretty. It's not always pretty. This is kind of the underbelly of college football.
And it's only happened, I think, for the most part, with these big programs with guys that are ready to go to the NFL.
Yes,
I mean,
exactly.
The majority of the colleges have guys that are like us, probably, that play or whatever, that aren't going to play in the NFL, and they're not having to deal with these agents. So it's a very small, I think, percentage is being affected.
Gosh, it's been a long time since you've seen an LSU offense that has an air game like it has right now, huh, guys? Your thoughts on Cam Cameron and how he's been able to really make over this LSU offense?
Well, it's hard to argue with the results. I think obviously the biggest thing he's done is he's tutored Zach Mettenberger to where he's not just his awareness is so much better. You knew he had the big cannon, and we didn't really know if he had the accuracy last year because he just did not seem to have everything synced up, and a lot of that had to do with the fact that a lot of times LSU couldn't even get the play in time. The mechanics of play in, play out, they just seem so much smoother, so much more efficient. And Zach Mettenberger has an NFL-type arm. He can really spin it. And, when you talk about Odell Beckham Jr., Jarvis Landry's potential NFL-type wide receivers, they have top-level offensive talent. They recruited every year. So I think it's exciting to watch. I will say this. The one thing this offense is aching for to be almost unstoppable is someone that can work hash to hash in the middle there. I think that a third wide receiver, a slot receiver, or a tight end that can really work the seams, this offense would be even better than what it has been, but it's miles away from what it was last year.
Well, he's finally got a quarterback-friendly system to operate out of. Last year, how many times did we watch him in two guys out in the pattern running way downfield. I mean, the low percentage pass, no check down receiver, no middle check down over the middle. I mean, now we're seeing guys at different levels. They're attacking all levels of the defense, and it's much easier on the quarterback, and so he's going to be more efficient. And they've worked on his fundamentals, on his footwork, and on his vision downfield, and you can see it all paying off. And now he's getting more and more confident. And I think the sky's the limit for him, no question.
Let's head to the phone lines, 504-866-3200. Chuck is in Mid-City. Chuck, welcome. You're on Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher, our guest tonight, Jeff Duncan, and Sean Fazende.
Hey, man, you guys look good, dude. You look good there.
Thank you, Chuck.
So, listen, my question is, given the fact that we all know college football, especially at the highest level, is this billion-dollar industry for these guys. I mean, obviously, that's why, you've got coaches that have these multi-million-dollar salaries and so forth, and the boosters and everything that they're doing. What would be the beginning of having some type of what I would consider fair compensation for these college students that they do whatever to try and recruit these blue chippers because they know they are the program. They are the Johnny Manziels out there and the guys who are going to, make your program very viewable on television. So you get TV ratings and and monies and all these different things. The college scholarship is not a guaranteed contract for these kids, right?
Well, they're guaranteed at least 4 years of school if they can keep the grades up.
Not every scholarship is guaranteed, and not every scholarship is for 4 years. Some of these things have to be renewed.
Well, I guess your call is about compensation for college players, Chuck?
So what would be the foundation of trying to make this a fair and equitable, if you will, compensation for the student? I mean, let's say, what's Johnny Manziel's value to A&M right now monetarily?
Chuck, thank you for the phone call. Guys, that is a tough question that college presidents are trying to deal with right now, trying to figure out how do you compensate, if you compensate players, how do you compensate from a big school to a small school, from obviously a major sport to a minor sport?
Yeah, I think it's a very complicated thing that the NCAA's thought about for a long time, and I think it's way too complex to just say, let's pay these guys. Who do you pay? Do you not pay the gymnastics team? They're working hard. There's people go to their events, not as many, but I think you open up Title IX concerns and issues if you start paying players. And I actually take a different tact on this. I think Johnny Manziel is worth. There's definitely a value to him to Texas A&M, but I think if he's not at A&M, they still got a really good team, and there's 90,000 people at every one of those games. They've had a big-time program for a long time. Southern Cal's program's been big before Reggie Bush got there, and they're going to be big after. I know they're struggling now, but I think college football is about the front of the jersey, not the back of the jersey. I think it's about the program, and I think there's a few cases, a few individual stars where you can make that point that they sell tickets and jerseys. But for the most part, you've got a bunch of guys that are just part of a program to be happy to be there and are not marketable and not bankable and are not making millions of dollars for a university. And so I don't know how you pay. Do you pay Reggie Bush more money than you pay the guy that's the center, the backup center?
Well, and that's always been sort of the problem. It's where, how do you define who does and does not get paid and at what level? And I understand what you're saying. And, I've always kind of felt this way when it comes to a football player, gymnastics, where you can make kind of a fair and equitable thing. You pay them like it's a regular student job, 20-hour-a-week job, however much that turns out to be, then you pay them. This is just my opinion here. But I think when you get where you see those front-end guys, those Johnny Manziels, Cam Newton's back in the day, all these big-name guys, if a school is going to use their likeness, then I think that area only should they maybe get a little more compensation, because you are special, because you are you're the guy they're kind of putting out there to help raise a lot of money. So maybe in that regard, I would consider some compensation. But I think just base, regular, it's to just have your scholarship in your room and board. There's no harm in giving a guy $200 a week just to live life. So I don't. That's where I probably stand in the pay and players, and there's a lot of issues as far as budgetary issues, who gets paid, who does not. But that's where I've always kind of stayed in the middle when it comes to that, because it's not an easy question. It really isn't.
Let's head back to the phone lines. Ryan is in Mid-City. Ryan, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports.
How y'all doing, man? I had a question, but I think y'all answered that earlier. So I got another question. Do y'all think that the LSU offensive line can handle? Well, I'm gonna say handle. I know they can handle them, but can they withstand Alabama defensive line? Because I played on the line. I played offensive guard, and I know if you know your own snap count, you already got an advantage on your opponent. You know what I'm saying? So I just get off the phone and listen to y'all, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ryan. Guys, there is some question about the LSU offensive line right now in terms of the running game. But your thoughts on this line, and can they handle SEC play?
Well, we're going to find out, and it's got to get better. There's no question about that. And I think it's still a little bit of a work in progress.
Yep.
I'm not sure that we're going to end up with the same 5 at the end of the year that we've got in there right now. I think Les Miles, he's an old offensive line coach. He knows that's an area they've got to get better at. But I'm not sure that that's going to be what decides that Alabama game. I think it's going to come down to the opposite side. Can LSU's defense handle their offense? Because right now Alabama's offense is struggled, at least in the opener. And I actually think Alabama is going to take care of business against A&M. I'll be shocked if they don't get some revenge in that game. So I think we'll learn a little more about Alabama this week.
I think the offensive line, we saw it last year, work in progress. They shifted some guys around last year, brought some guys in, brought Dwarsic back in, shifted some guys inside, outside. I do think Miles has shown he's not afraid to make some moves along that offensive line. In particular, I've heard rave reviews about Ethan Posick, the freshman, could possibly see some playing time. I could see why they would want that. Lyle Collins looks like a NFL type prospect on the left end. So I do think it's sort of a work in progress. They're not where they want to be yet, but is any team really where they want to be yet in week 3 of the college football season? But I do think that is one area where they can clearly use an upgrade.
Tulane with a loss last week to South Alabama, taking on Louisiana Tech this week. Guys, how good can this team be?
Man, I don't know. I mean, I was really disappointed in that performance.
I think we all were.
I think everybody thought they were going to start 2-0. Yes. You get that team at home. That's a setback for CJ and that defense. I mean, they've got to play better defensively, and they're getting ready to go up into a hornet's nest. I mean, I've covered a lot of games up in Ruston. That is not an easy place to play, and now they've got to come off this devastating loss. Where they're going to be mentally, I don't know.
But, I just wondered, you talk about Atlanta kind of Saints in their head. I wonder if that getting the 2-0 is maybe a little bit psychological with that, not just this Tulane regime, but kind of the Tulane mindset right now. That was such a deflating loss. They really, they were better than that team on Saturday, and it just did not show it. I think this team is capable to get to maybe 4 wins, maybe 5 wins, but you just kind of got to get over that psychological hump, so to speak, and believe you can win these games consistently.
No doubt. Guys, thanks so much for being with us tonight. Certainly appreciate you guys coming down and joining me on the program, and look forward to having you guys again down the line.
Yeah, my pleasure, Eric.
I want to thank you guys for tuning in to Inside New Orleans Sports. Remember, there's a rebroadcast of this program, 10 to 11 on Fridays, and you can catch us each and every Thursday night, 6 to 7 live here on WLAE TV. Also, you can catch me on the radio on WGSO 990 AM, 11 a.m. until 1 p.m. on weekdays, and also at ericasher.com. Special thanks to the staff at WLAE, the production staff, also to Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, and of course my producer, William Hill. Folks, thanks so much to Sean Fazende and also Jeff Duncan, and thank you so much for watching tonight. We'll see you again next Thursday on Inside New Orleans Sports.